Week I had the opportunity to be part of the APEC Policy Conference in Washington, D.C. It was an enormous gathering, 18,000 participants, some of which were part of the Republican-leaning side, some of them were part of the Democratic-leaning side, some independent, some Israeli. 18,000 people, most of whom were Jewish, about 3,000, 3,500 student activists from college campuses, and a growing number of high school students. And I found myself in this really interesting moment in my own professional and personal life, because here I am in Berkeley, California, where as a Zionist who leans left in terms of Israeli policies and leans left in many ways on American domestic policies, I was also surrounded by an incredibly enthusiastic crowd of people loving Israel in lots of different ways, because there I was with an American administration who certainly does not lean left. But my role at the conference was to moderate a panel including 3 Israeli grassroots movements leaning towards peace. The panel was entitled Peace Movements in Israel, and it included representatives of Women Wage Peace, an incredible grassroots movement of Arab and Jewish women who are demanding relationship in order to build peace, and representatives of a retired generals coalition representing the IDF and Mossad and Israeli police, who have all joined the peace camp because they realize that a military solution is not sustainable, and the CEO of a group called Darkenu, which was is an incredible organization that works toward getting Israel to unilaterally withdraw, to separate until such a day that a peace agreement will be possible. And here I was in the midst of a policy conference that is seen from the outside as being truly one-sided, and nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, the criticism that AIPAC has endured since this year's policy conference for being too open, too committed to the two-state solution, has been ironic and very powerful, because that has been my experience as an activist within the AIPAC world for some time, that if someone of my politics can be involved and embraced and actually promoted as a leader within, so too can those of us on any side of the political spectrum see ourselves at home in this big tent. AIPAC has worked very hard to engender the respect from progressive activists who are Jewish and not, and conservative activists who are Jewish and not. And some of that has been problematic at the time. And so the truth is that for me, inasmuch as some of our elected officials do not resemble my politics at all today, I do respect AIPAC, including all of our voices. And so here's what I want to say. This week's portion and a class I just finished teaching on parenting all fit into this general experience that I wanted to commend AIPAC for, and also say that this is where we need to continue putting pressure on all of our organizations and, in fact, our country. So this week we're going to read Vayakhel Pekudei. It's a double Torah reading that culminates with the completion of the Mishkan, the portable tabernacle. Moses has labored, and so have countless artists, and the entire people have donated generous amounts of time and wealth towards creating this holy place where they will encounter God most directly. And at the very end of these 2 portions, which are also the final 2 portions of the book of Exodus, we have God's cloud, and whatever that means, it's very complicated, but God's presence fills the Mishkan, fills the tabernacle, and then the text says, V'lo yachol Moshe, Moses could not enter into the place because God so suffused it. What is it to believe something so fervently that you don't allow one of your partners in construction to be part of that conversation? Moses couldn't get in, and the one experience that we must have, and maybe it's a parallel to how unfair it is that Moses cannot go in to the land of Israel at the end of his life's work, is that it's just not fair when we don't grant space. The very next word in the Torah after our book ends, the book of Exodus ends, the very first word of the book of Leviticus is the word Vayikra, and God called, and God is calling to Moses. What makes that moment quite beautiful is that God's call in Hebrew is represented with the word Vayikra. It's the name of the book in Hebrew. The final letter of that first word is an aleph. And in the Torah, the word Vayikra has a very small aleph. It's meant to be noticeably smaller. And the notes and critical editions of the Bible, of the Torah, have a little asterisk, and it points you to a note. It doesn't explain why the aleph is smaller, but it says it's supposed to be. In many other places, when you see an irregular letter, the calligraphy is disjointed, that might disqualify the Torah from being used. But in this case, the aleph must be smaller in order for the Torah to be kosher. Well, I'll make a suggestion, and this is both in concert with my observation at Policy Conference this year, and also my observation of what it is to be a neighbor, what it is to be a parent, what it is to be a good partner, what it is to be in relationship. That small aleph at the end of the word Vayikra might indicate, and I would suggest should indicate to us, that in order to call each other, we have to be ready to move just a step back and to grant space to perform the mystical act of tzimtzum so that we can be in relationship with each other. God, maybe, saw Moses' face when Moses couldn't get into this holy place that he himself had been involved in creating. All the wealth, all the time, all the toil, all the art, all of Moses' own frustrations, most likely, came to a head in the culmination of this creative process, and God shows up and Moses can't get in. I have the experience as a progressive Jewish American activist. I'm part of something called the Progressive Rabbinic Zionist Caucus. It is hard work to bring together the world of the progressive activist with the world of the Zionist. Because in the world of Zionism, progressivism sounds suspect. And for progressive activists, as we're seeing in America and the Women's March and other very complicated places, to have a love of Israel, sometimes just to be a Jew, is suspect, is dangerous, is called out as something alien, other, a strange fire in the holy. So here's what I'd like to suggest. When it comes to the way that we relate to each other, our big ideas cannot keep each other out if we mean for them to be healthy in the world. To be a fundamentalist of any kind is to exclude the humanity of someone who feels differently. And we might even say that at the end of this week's Parsha, where God so fills the space that there isn't room for Moses, we might even say that we can learn from God's learning. That from so much taking up of space that God does in the creation of the Mishkan, God even learns how to call with a humbler, a more gentle, a space-granting way, so that Moses can once again enter into partnership, into relationship, and be present as a partner in the holy work. So what I would bless us with as parents, as people, Jewish and not, we're in relationship with each other. May we see our truths as worthy. May we make sure to see the humanity of people who disagree. And when the violation of that kind of living happens, may we call it out as unworthy. Unworthy for leaders, unworthy as parents, unworthy as partners. We have to make space for each other in order for this world to emerge healthier than the moment that we find ourselves in today. If God can do that kind of growth, so too can we. Shabbat Shalom.